When an older woman asked for something as simple as water, she never imagined it would spark an ordeal. But the treatment she received was far from respectful, and the revelation that followed left everyone stunned. Stay tuned as this remarkable story unfolds, and share where you're joining us from. We love connecting with you. The premium cabin on the long-haul flight from Miami to Paris was the epitome of elegance. Spacious seats, upholstered in rich navy leather, reclined fully to offer maximum comfort. Soft golden lights created a serene ambience, and the gentle aroma of pastries and brewed tea drifted from the galley. Margaret Ellis, a petite woman in her early 70s, adjusted the edges of her knitted shawl and took a deep breath. It had been decades since she'd traveled by plane, and this trip felt like a dream. Her son, James Ellis, a respected attorney, had meticulously planned this journey to fulfill her lifelong wish of seeing Paris. Margaret unfolded the in-flight menu and pressed the service button for assistance. A flight attendant, Rachel Grant, approached with a composed demeanor but a notably indifferent tone. "Yes, how can I help you?" Rachel asked, her words clipped. Margaret smiled warmly. "Could I trouble you for a glass of water, please?" Rachel glanced toward the front of the cabin, then back at Margaret. "We're not serving drinks until after we're airborne," she replied curtly before walking off. Margaret was taken aback. Her request was simple, but the attendant's response felt unnecessarily cold. She tried to brush it off, hoping it was just a misunderstanding. Once the plane had reached cruising altitude, Margaret noticed Rachel offering beverages to other passengers, her demeanor noticeably more pleasant with them. Margaret pressed the service button again, hesitant but determined to ask once more. Rachel returned, her irritation barely concealed. "Yes? What do you need now?" she asked flatly. Margaret hesitated, then said softly, "Could I have a glass of water now, please?" Rachel let out an audible sigh. "Are you sure you're seated in the right section? This is the premium cabin." Margaret blinked, startled. "Yes, my son booked this seat for me." Rachel folded her arms. "We've had issues with people moving up without permission. I'll need to verify your ticket." Nearby passengers began to murmur and exchange looks. Margaret's hands trembled slightly as she searched her purse for her boarding pass. Her voice was low but firm as she said, "There's no need to treat me this way." Rachel remained indifferent. "I'm simply following the rules, ma'am." At that moment, James returned to his seat after a brief visit to the restroom. He immediately noticed his mother's distressed expression and the tense atmosphere. James, a tall and confident man in his early 40s, quickly assessed the situation. Seeing Margaret hand over her ticket with shaky hands, he leaned in gently. "What's going on, Mom?" he asked softly. Margaret's voice wavered. "She doesn't believe I'm supposed to be here, James." James' eyes darkened with quiet determination. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder before turning to Rachel. "Excuse me," he began, his tone calm yet commanding. "What seems to be the issue here?" Rachel's confident posture faltered as she stammered. "Oh, it's nothing serious, sir. I just needed to confirm her seat assignment. You understand, it's standard procedure." James arched a brow, his gaze sharp. "Standard procedure? Can you explain exactly what led you to single out my mother?" Rachel hesitated, her words stumbling. "It's just we have to be thorough sometimes. Things like this happen." James' lips curved into a tight smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "And by things, you mean what, exactly?" Her discomfort was palpable as she struggled to justify her actions. James, a skilled litigator, had no difficulty recognizing insincerity when he saw it. The murmurs from nearby passengers grew louder, and Rachel's unease was impossible to miss. James scanned the cabin, noticing passengers' attention shifting toward the unfolding scene. A few exchanged uneasy glances, some whispered in hushed tones, and one man sitting a row ahead gave him a subtle nod, silently acknowledging the injustice he'd witnessed. Turning back to Rachel, James kept his tone even but firm. "You've already seen her ticket. She's exactly where she belongs. So why is this still an issue?" Rachel's discomfort was obvious as she shifted on her feet. She opened her mouth to respond, but James raised a hand, stopping her mid-thought. His patience had run out, and it was time to address the matter directly. Taking a step forward, his tall figure loomed over the visibly unsettled flight attendant. His voice, steady but commanding, silenced the growing murmurs. "Let's be clear about what's happening here," he began, his words measured yet impactful. "You made an assumption about my mother, a deeply offensive one, and acted on it, humiliating her in front of a cabin full of strangers. The question is why?" The cabin grew quiet, every eye now on the scene. Rachel fidgeted, her composure faltering as James continued, his voice now carrying across the cabin. "My mother, Margaret Ellis, is no ordinary woman. She's a retired school principal who dedicated her life to educating and uplifting others. She's fought for fairness, inclusion, and respect in ways most people wouldn't understand. And yet, on what was supposed to be a joyous trip, she's being made to feel like she doesn't belong." Gasps echoed through the cabin, followed by an audible stir among the passengers. James wasn't finished. "Let me make this perfectly clear," he said, his tone sharpening as his gaze locked on Rachel. "This behavior isn't just inappropriate, it's unacceptable. And in case you're wondering, I'm James Ellis, a civil rights attorney who has spent years fighting cases exactly like this. I'm here today as her son, but I assure you, if this pattern continues, I will return in a professional capacity." Rachel's face turned crimson as she stumbled for a response, but words failed her. Another flight attendant, a woman named Lisa, approached cautiously, sensing the gravity of the situation. "Sir, ma'am," Lisa began, her tone calm but apologetic, "I deeply regret what's happened. On behalf of the crew, I sincerely apologize for any distress caused. This incident will be reported immediately." Margaret, who had remained silent, placed a gentle hand on James's arm. Her soft yet steady voice broke through the tension. "James, it's all right. Let it go. I've faced worse in my time, and I've learned that the most powerful lessons come through forgiveness." James hesitated, the muscles in his jaw tightening. "Forgiveness doesn't erase accountability, Mom." Margaret smiled, her gaze warm and knowing. "No, but it opens the door for change. Let's ensure this is a moment they learn from." Lisa nodded quickly. "It will be, I promise. Please allow me to make this right for you both." Passengers chimed in, their voices filled with admiration. "Mrs. Ellis, thank you for standing tall," a woman across the aisle said. Another added, "You're an inspiration. Your son's right. People need to do better." Rachel, still shaken, turned to Margaret, her voice trembling. I'm truly sorry, Mrs. Ellis. I didn't mean to offend you." Margaret's gaze softened, though her words carried weight. "It's not about intent. It's about action. Remember, respect isn't tied to status or recognition. It's about how you treat every person, no matter who they are." Lisa returned moments later with 2 glasses of sparkling water and a handwritten note. "Thank you for your grace. We'll work to be better." Margaret took a sip of the long-awaited drink, a peaceful smile crossing her face. "It's all right now," she said quietly. But James couldn't shake the lingering question. Would the airline truly change, or was this just another empty promise? Margaret leaned back in her seat as the plane soared over the ocean. She turned to James with a knowing look and said, "The fight for respect and dignity is never really over. But moments like this remind me why it's worth it." Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment that demanded courage and accountability? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories of resilience and justice.